a couple of minutes, unless any of you would like to add anything at this point. Then I'm going to just do some summing up comments, and then we'll turn to the questions from you all. And I'm going to do this really quickly. I think, first of all, I want to personally thank all of you for such eloquent statements, and in a way, I don't think I can attempt to sum up the passion that you expressed and the complexity of your ideas, but I'm going to use the time just to put out a couple of general thoughts, and then we'll go quickly to the question and answers. I think in terms of what women have accomplished, it's fair to say that the victory dance is premature because each gain brings its own challenges, and I think you all have illustrated that pretty clearly, that opening up male-dominated fields to women leads to a greater workload for women and the possibility of greater stress and dealing with overwhelming choice. The question of more control over our bodies. If you, again, look at that demographic sheet you've got in front of you, it's very clear how people are marrying later, having fewer children, having children later. And one of the things that has occurred alongside of that you could say is a new challenge, is the need for advances in fertility technology. Somewhere I read about the contrasting numbers of what existed in fertility clinics and what it is today. I can't quote you the numbers, but I think you're all aware of the fact that that's a booming industry. So we've come a long way, but we've come a long way, maybe. There's more to do. One of the things, I went to a day at Radcliffe recently. They had an institute at which they were honoring Gloria Steinem, who's over 75 at this point. And one of the things that she said, which I took to heart, was that women won't be equal outside the home until men are equal within the home. We haven't spent a lot of time talking about male partners, but we know how important partners and intimate relationships are in terms of supporting what women are going after. You made a strong case, Ellen, and I think all of you corroborated it in terms of the need for support around childcare, and I just want to extend that to the work that needs to be done about making the workplace more flexible for both men and women, family-friendly work policies, the importance of support on a day-to-day basis. I don't know whether any of you had a chance to look at that wonderful Lisa Belkin article. I think we put it out in an e-blast, which was how some couples are actually trying to divide their time so that both partners are very heavily involved in the household chores and the child care, and that this is an experiment going forward, and we'll see where it gets us. The last thing that I want to say is just kudos to the college for providing not only the increased opportunities for leadership, and I bet that many, if not most, if not all of you, read about the new Madeleine Albright Center for Global Leadership that's opening. But I was impressed also with the comments that I mentioned to you from this graduating senior about how faculty and administration are trying to get more involved with the undergraduates and prepare them for the realities of what happens in the postgraduate life. So kudos to what Wellesley is trying to do at this point more and more on that ground. Okay, anybody else want to say anything?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I would like to say still is that financial management was an area that I was just totally unprepared to do with my life. I think I had modeled it after my mother, who gave it up to let her husband, my dad, manage things, and things went okay. And I unwittingly gave up that whole realm to my husband, and I think we were both the poorer for it. So that's something I think it is so important for young women to get, and maybe start it at a place like Wellesley, where financial management for the rest of your life is something you are comfortable with and knowledgeable about.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to start reading some of these questions that came up, and thank you all for contributing them. It says, question to a member of the class of 2000. Who could that be? As a member of the class of 1970, it says, I recall women judging one another negatively for choosing to stay home with young children. Have you experienced this?
Not so far, not directly. I certainly worry about it and wonder about it. I know that you know, my mother was very concerned about me serving on this panel, and I very much appreciate. She said, "Are you going to get eaten alive?" And, you know, it's like in the spirit of civil discourse. I think we'll be okay. But it is something that I worried about. As I said, when I graduated, I did not think I would be getting married as young as I did. I did not think that I would be having children as young as I did. You know, maybe not. In fact, like the trajectory of my life that mine most closely mirrors is Phoebe's, our moderator. There is a tide that's sort of turning. There is still tension among, you know, the working moms and the stay-at-home moms. But I also think that that's changing. And I do see a lot more collaboration of, you know, moms establishing play dates with a kid's nanny and, you know, that sort of thing, you know, just sort of whoever happens to be at home and whoever happens to be at work. I also run into more stay-at-home dads, and they have it far rougher than I do in terms of how other people look at them and view their choice.
Great, great. Here's another one, which is a little bit connected to the question that I just posed. Why are women often the greatest obstacle for women? That relates to, I think, the anecdote that you told, Ellen. And anybody else want to try on that one?
Yeah, I'm going to argue with the questioner.
Good.
Because I think that's a stereotype, like the woman boss. You don't want a woman boss. I think if you look at the economics of the situation, if you look at the professional situation, the political situation, it is not women who are making it tough for women. And I'm not going to excoriate men, but they're the only ones left, right? And that's not meant to be on an individual basis. I think that one thing I've learned from women's studies is that you don't look only at individuals, you look at systems. And if you look at the larger system, then you see that it isn't women who are necessarily making it tougher for women.
Well, here's a question that follows up on that. It says, why do you think men don't wrestle with the same issues? Takers?
May I answer?
Please.
You may. Well, I think some men actually do, but I think in a way women are luckier because in many cases we are offered the flexibility to make choices, even though no choices can be, if you have no choice it's not so difficult, but choices are a double-edged sword. So I think men don't have those choices. Their expectation is the straight line, and that can be really tough.
I read something by Lisa Belkin recently. She wrote an article called The Opt-Out Generation. She makes a very similar point. She talks about the number of women dropping out to stay home and take care of children, and that maybe that's an easy way of women expressing dissatisfactions that may arise on the job, and that men don't have that opportunity, even though there may be a lot of stresses and they may not be all that satisfied with what they're doing. So that needs more looking at, I think. You want to comment? Okay.
It puts me in mind of a very vivid memory I have from my senior year of a friend of mine who was planning to marry her fiance. He was already her fiance at that point, and he said that he wanted to be a stay-at-home dad, that he wanted to be the one to stay home and raise their kids. And she said it was just something very visceral, it wasn't rational, it wasn't based on any of the values that I proposed to espouse here at Wellesley, but I went, no, that's mine. That's mine. You know? that was her choice to make. She wasn't entirely sure that she wanted to be home at the time, but it was very eye-opening for all of us, because when she brought it back to her dorm, she's like, can you believe what he said? Like, it's so great, and I don't like it. You know?
Yes. So. Gatekeeping, that's called gatekeeping. Okay, I'm just looking at what we've got here, and they're really quite a wide range. I'm going to try this one. Has the progress we have made collectively as women bridged or widened the divides between women of different races, ethnicities, and sexualities?
That's a great question.
Or how much faster, it says here, has feminism progressed for white straight women? That's been, of course, a question that's made a huge impact on the whole feminist movement. Anybody want to attempt a comment on that one?
Well, I think that if I look at the progress of women's studies, the earlier writers, let's say in the late 70s and early 80s, were not aware that they were simply writing about white middle-class women. And at a certain point, people started talking and saying, wait a second, that is not about me. That's about you over there. But my life as a black woman or a Hispanic woman or an Asian woman is a different kind of life, and you have got to include that. And that has influenced the way the field works now. So at least at the academic level, there has been an awakening, but the academic level is not the social level.
Anybody else want to say anything about that?
The only thing I would say, and we've put in a lot of plugs for Gail Collins' book, but it was really reinforcing for me, or made me really recall that, we're really in a luxurious position to even say we've got to wrestle with choices. There are generations of African American women or Hispanic women where both mom and dad worked, and women have been working because they had to in those cultures forever. So to even be tossing with some of these choices is, I don't know, a little erudite, I think. So.
Anybody else?
Well, I just wanted to point out the idea of the opt-out generation, because I do feel that I'm, a part of that, and yet that's a luxury that I have, to opt out, because, fortunately I have a partner that makes enough that we can do that too on that end. So the opt-out, the idea of an opt-out, that there are all these women, these are college graduates, these are women of a certain socioeconomic status who are able to opt out.
Absolutely. I'm going to shift us back to the college years with this question. During your eras, parietal rules shifted dramatically and were eliminated. How did campus social life change? Any problems as things loosened up?
Well, I always thought that everyone else seemed to be having more fun than I was.
The first time I had a boy in the dorm was my 25th reunion, so I got my husband to stay.
I guess things have changed. Anybody else?
It gets pretty comical because there are still issues of security and just having guests and visitors in the dorm no matter what, but the idea, the horizontal vertical rule of, in Stone Davis, your male guest could walk along the corridor in Davis, but if it crossed into Stone, that was a vertical move, and you couldn't make a vertical move without your Wellesley escort. So that kind of thing. And they still do, I think, if they still do bells, the callers, visitors, and guests, so that you know who you're expecting on the other end, so that you can refuse the person if you need to. There's no bells? Oh, it's so sad.
Okay. Anybody else?
Cell phones.
Do you comment, or I'll move us?
Well, I'm glad, because I didn't like the distinction between the caller and the visitor, because I never had many callers, and so everyone knew I didn't have many callers. And as my friend reminded me, there was a woman on our floor who had too many callers, and so we were wondering what the heck she was doing. So it invoked more than it needed to. So it wasn't just about whether you had a male or a female waiting for you.
Right.
And the joke was that if your boyfriend were staying more than 3 days, he should probably start paying tuition.
I see.